Welcome, everyone. This is a Kim Coaching Group's interview series. We have Jackie Santayana with us today. I'm very, very excited to share her story because I heard so much inspirational stories that a lot of people needs to hear. So very excited to have her sharing her stories. Jackie, thank you so much for joining today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm excited to get to talk today.
Yeah, me too. So could you share a little bit about your background and your journey, like what brought you here?
Yeah. So I'll start from the beginning. I was originally born and raised in Southern California. I think from there I actually went to Santa Clara University um, down in Santa Clara. So I was there for about 4 years. And then I think once I graduated, it was a recession. So one of those turbulent times trying to find employment. And so I ideally wanted to stay actually up here in the Bay, but I needed to move back down in Southern California. At that time, I was doing two unpaid internships and I was a cashier. Um, Through that unpaid internship, that's how I was able to get my first job. So I was working at a nonprofit. When I was working at the nonprofit, I still felt like I wanted more. And so that's how I came across where I'm at now. So I work at a tech company for about 10 years. And I started off as an implementation specialist, and now I'm a manager. So that's a little bit about my career journey.
Oh, that's awesome. And what does implementation manager do?
Yeah, so they typically help clients who purchase software get up and running within their organization, make sure that they start on time, fully implement the solution and leverage it day in and day out. And so that's what we really try to do. And then we transition them to their long-term care.
Ah, that's a very important service for the customers. And you mentioned that you started your career during this last financial crisis, one of the hardest time in industry too. Like we are going through kind of similar thing again, but I think that's why also it makes sense that to hear your story now. So these days, like many people are struggling to securing their jobs. A lot of people get laid off and then they feel like there is less jobs out there and they feel like there are too many people applying for the roles. So I started to hear people saying like they are giving up on their dreams and settling for less. And that's why it's just very inspiring to hear your story because you started your career when economy was also very bad, but sounds like you didn't really give up. You just constantly figuring out where you want to go and then made it happen. So can you share a little bit of your experience of what happened and how did it feel to navigate through those challenging time? And then we'll change into like how you get over that.
Yeah, I think going into college, I had a lot of different interests. And so I always envied those who went to college and they knew, like, oh, I want to get into nursing or, I want to become a CPA. And I think when you have a lot of interest, you kind of see yourself in multiple roles and it's hard to define it into one. So I think that was one of the big challenges first is trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I think one of the key pieces that was super helpful was kind of leveraging the community around me. So being able to talk to other people 2 or 3 years older or even more understanding their own journey. And I think that piece gave me a lot of hope. It actually allowed me to determine, hey, these are the different things that I kind of want in my new job. And even if, let's say, I couldn't get that in my first job and I have it now, which is awesome, I knew what the end goal was. And so it was important for me to continue to have experiences in that role that would lead me to my next one. So I would say it's definitely kind of an overwhelming time, but I really attribute it to the community I had and those kind of cheering me on along the way because it was definitely tough.
Mm. And I want to hear a little bit more about that. Like when you feel like there's no job that you want is available, so you start to do something else, but you already know what you want to do. And when you're going through that time, it's just impressive to me that you say like it's gonna happen, just a matter of time. Just I'm going through this part. But a lot of people feel like I keep trying and trying, it's never gonna change. How was your like experience when you're going through that time? Like what gave you the belief that it will happen or the energy? You mentioned the community too, but like internally inside you that give that energy and power, or maybe you say like, oh, it was now that I'm looking back, I had all the belief and everything, but maybe it was still like a lot of downtime. So like maybe you can hear a little bit more about that because other people may be experiencing the similar things right now.
Yeah, I think in the moment it was hard to know that it would happen. But I think talking to people who've gone through it in the past gave hope because it was evident that people had their own paths. There were people that were able to get it immediately and they're doing what they love. There was other people that had to kind of take several jobs, and then
Mhm.
maybe it was the fourth or fifth job that got them to where they wanted to be. And so I think talking to people who are in different stages of their life kind of allows you to have of mind that maybe it's not now, but there is going to be a future point where I could achieve that. I think I also recognized that I was looking for a lot of experience. Like I came out of college, a lot of different internships, but it wasn't really pointed. It was just different internships, different
Mhm.
opportunities. And so I think when I was able to finally figure out what I wanted, it allowed me to refine my search. And I think that allowed me to see my experience. And even though it was so varied, I could pull different things that were applicable for that role. So I think once I got that clarity, it gave me a lot of hope. But in the midst of it, it was definitely very different. So I that's definitely something I remember.
What I hear in what you said is even if it's not the job that you really want at the end, you always find something that's applicable as your experience, as some kind of tools in your tool belt that will help you to get, and you'll be successful when you actually get the kind of position you want to have. I think that's like a really important mindset that a lot of people may be forgetting.
Yeah, I think that piece is an important choice to
Hmm.
make when you're in this phase because I think it's very easy to ask yourself, why me? Why is this happening? And start discrediting everything that you've done or that you're capable of. And when you switch that mindset, it makes it easier for you to pull on other experiences that have been successful and that will be relevant. Like I know for my job that I'm in now, I was coming from a nonprofit, very different line of work. And I was able to pull like my ability to talk to different business owners in the nonprofit I was working with to allow me to be able to work with multiple stakeholders when I'm working in implementation and project management. There are
Hmm.
other instances where the job I have now, there was a training component for the role, and my college job, like my senior year, I had to train people on how to do things. So I was able to take those experiences that were so completely different and make it transferable in that moment, which landed me, the job I've always wanted. So that was some of the things that I think reshaped the way that I saw my situation.
I think that's one of the things that I was really inspired by your story and wanted to invite to this interview too. A lot of people realize what they did in the past that was kind of random at the time they thought, or actually has meaning. Like that's actually helping to shape who they are right now. But it's very hard to see at the moment because they sometimes feel like, oh, I want this, but I'm getting this. Like, oh, I failed. Like, so people have this I failed, I cannot get what I want, like determine like this is what I need. If I don't get it, I'm failed kind of mindset. And how did you, or like what do you think was helping you to see this as well, this is not what I want, but I can still get the experience and I can extract the experience that I need for what I really want. And I'll just take a step and eventually get there. Was there anything that helped you to think that way in a different mindset than other people?
I remember when I was in this phase, I was applying for hundreds. I probably had 40, 50 interviews in the span of a year. And I remember each interview getting feedback and that kind of building me actually for that final one that I got
Mm.
within this new role. Um, I think as well doing practice runs with people, like being vulnerable and asking people like, hey, can we do a practice interview? Was super helpful as well because then they can pinpoint and give you feedback on, hey, like this is how it came across when you said this, maybe tweak it this way, and they know you, so they could say, hey, you actually accomplished this way back when you did this. Why don't you bring that experience? It can
Mm.
be referenceable. And so there were also some blind spots I had within myself that I think those people were able to bring out. But it does take vulnerability to reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, can we do a practice interview? Can you tell me what you're getting from this?"
I think that's a very important point. Like a lot of my clients come in and like totally disconnected with their power inside them and say like, oh, I cannot do that. Like this is too hard. And I ask about like what they've done in their lives. And they did so much amazing things. They were so brave. They took risk without knowing the outcome and they were creative. They were resourceful to figure things out. So when I remind them like you're amazing. And then finally they get clicked with their powerful self and then have this energy and like the mindset that I can do this. So I think that's a very good point. You don't see by yourself. And also I think people are starting to forget it because nobody's reminding them. And you keep hearing those like hero stories. That this is amazing person here, amazing person there, and keep comparing it to all these people and then feel like, well, I'm nobody, I'm nothing. Like there's always better people out there. But most of the people I met, or actually everybody I met, was like having amazing power story in their inside in their history. So even just like talking to them and then sharing that was like really insightful for a lot of people. So just like you said, a lot of people say, I didn't know that was such a positive thing that I should talk about. Like, you should, definitely you should. But they don't see it themselves. So going to talk to someone and then somebody actually pointed out, like, this is like amazing thing you have, you don't know, you don't see it. And that kind of feedback, I think is really good, not just for like interview prep type of way, but also like just awareing what is like amazing inside you that's hard for yourself. So that was like I see the community part. It was not just encouragement, but also giving that kind of feedback. So like, oh, I have this superpower I didn't know, and give you the energy and then the mindset that I can keep going and keep doing it, and I get there. So that's like really, yeah, inspirational. Cool.
Yeah. I would say just to add to that, I think it's so easy to compare. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons to learn is that everyone has their own path. And I think talking to different people allowed me to recognize that and see success doesn't look one way.
Exactly.
And I know, for instance, myself, like I had that period right when I graduated. Now my sister's in that
Mm,
space that I went through 10 years ago, where she was
mm.
working at a really, big tech company. She got laid off, and now she's going through the motions of that as well. And so it seems like it's always ebbs and flows, but that doesn't make you even less successful or less special or less talented because that's the phase of your life. Like that doesn't detract from who you are. That's just a phase of life at that point in time.
Exactly. And everybody's journey is different. The journey that you thought was like very rough part, maybe because of that you can have much bigger success and you never know. So I think that's absolutely right. Um, and while you're overcoming those things, like, is there any specific like actions you took or something you did, read, or that help you to get out of those mindset other than like talking to people and being vulnerable, which was a really amazing thing?
Let's see. I think one of the key things I did is I leveraged because it was so close to college, the job board network at my
Mhm.
university. My sister, she's actually used leveraging hers 10 years later. But that's something that I leveraged. And they had like a program where if you had access to that, you had access to others in different areas, like different universities as well. And so that was
Oh.
really cool to be able to tap into that. I think another piece is I went to some alumni events as well. And so when I moved back to LA, Orange County area, they would have events there and I would meet people, ask them about their stories as well. And so that was a huge way that I was able to get through that. And then a lot of career fairs. I looked at career fairs in my areas and networking events to kind of hear people talk and hear like fresh perspectives. So those were kind of the key pieces that I used.
Mm. A lot of people say like they don't know what to do with this um, networking events, like what to talk to, like come back and say, I don't know, I've been there, but I don't get anything out of it. Like, what was your goal when you go to this networking event, and what did you talk to people, and how did you get so much value out of it?
Yeah, it did take a lot of courage to go up and sell yourself because that's not too much of who I am. But I think the biggest piece for me was getting to know the opportunities out there and if possible, try to get a business card or contact information so that if I were to apply, there was a little bit more of that human connection because they would remember me to the resume. So there was a little bit more of advantage that I had because they could relate the two versus being one in a sea of 1,000 applications. So that was one of the key objectives. And even if, it may not have been as fruitful that time, then that was my opportunity to prepare for an interview or to practice my talk tracks, practice my intro. So I always saw it as a leap into kind of putting myself out there.
Mhm. Was there any person that comes up to mind that was like super helpful, that having that conversation was super helpful?
There's actually several, like when I think of like my community, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think first and foremost, my parents were huge. I think they luckily, and I know this is not the case for everyone, were able to sit in on a session when I graduated. And one of the key things they did say is like it is not helpful for you to follow up every day to see kind of where somebody is because they're already putting so much pressure on themselves. So I think a lot of the support I got was, you know, here's this person who's doing this job. They may have an opening, reach out to them. So it seemed like it was more so that and just words of encouragement and just reminding me, just because you're searching for this and it's taking longer than you anticipated doesn't make you any less. Um,
Mhm.
there's other people that I was really able to reach out to. One, her name is Trish, and she was pivotal actually. She was the one whose story gave me insight on what I should pursue, which is where I'm at now. And so listening to her story allowed me to connect the dots of what I wanted to pursue, which was like a tech role with project management, consulting, training. And so that conversation was huge because she probably moved 4 or 5 different roles, but each role was better and better and better. And she
Mhm.
went from startup to startup. So that was something that was a pivotal for me. And I've also talked to other people. I have a colleague named Michelle and another colleague named Karen who had very different lines of work, but they also shared their journey. And so I think it was really impactful to hear that.
Sounds like you got a lot of value out of networking events, like things that I collected already. You know the opportunities because you meet people and then what kind of work they do, and you collect their business cards. So when you actually end up applying for the company, you already know somebody in the company. And also by hearing their journeys, you get a lot of inspiration, like, oh, this is another opportunity I didn't even know about, and help you to shape your journey. And the last one sounds like more like inspirational and then helping you like the mindset wise and your attitude wise to go through those challenges. So like that's really inspiring again to hear like so much value you're getting out of networking events. I will definitely share that with the people who says like, I don't know what to do with networking events. I don't get anything out of it. There are so much to look for actually. Yeah, it'll not give you a job right there, most likely, but at least it has a lot of those values. And also like practicing your intro and all that and see like how when you say this way it was resonating very well, but this way was not so much, and you can keep practicing, which is very valuable too. So that's really great. Cool. And when you're looking back like 10 years ago, is there any advice or word of encouragement you wish you had or you want to tell to your younger self?
Yeah, I think one of the pieces I even see kind of now is not linking your worth and identity to your job.
Mhm.
Because I think there's going to be different phases of your life where, maybe you're doing really well, or, maybe you're building a career and starting from the bottom. I think it's a matter of like, are you happy with like the day-to-day tasks you're doing? And are you fulfilled? Because I think if, let's say, things happen and maybe a company is downsizing, a lot of people lose a portion of their identity. And I think it's really important to know you're so much more. And as you look, it doesn't mean you're less talented or less capable. It just means the job market's tough. That's the
Mhm.
environment. I think if I had that mindset, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today. So I think there's that, giving yourself grace too. I think it feels like there's the comparison game or a ticking time clock as you look, but be gentle with yourself. It's a tough market, so being able to give yourself breaks from
Mhm.
time to time, like if you need to, like take a break for several days and then go back at it, then definitely do that for yourself. And then I would say try to find people around you that will help support you. So for me, I am pretty sociable. So when it came to sitting down and doing the work, I worked better if somebody was with me at a coffee shop doing it together. Or, some people are better isolated or they need a regimented schedule, maybe every single day 9 to 10 p.m. or 6 to 7 p.m. is when you're going ahead and just doing one and you get it taken care of. So I think just understanding like what works best for you, honoring that, because as you chip away, like each step does bring you closer and closer.
I think that's so important, especially as a coach. I help people to really self-reflect and find about who they are truly, often because weirdly we don't really know about ourselves well, right? Like because we were told what we should do and what is success looks like from our parents and teachers and our bosses. We were keep told, and a lot of people were doing well. That's why they got good score, and people say you did a great job and you got a good job, and now you need to like get promoted. And it was it was working, and then suddenly it's not working, and they feel like they failed. But then when they realize is, I don't even know what I wanted, what I like to do, what's important to me. I just did what they say I should do, and then I get keep complimented I was doing well. So that was fun. So I was keep doing it with momentum. But now suddenly like I don't even know. So what you said is a lot about like knowing what you want and not comparing with others. Like you have your journey, you have what you want that's unique to you, and just going after that. That's definitely easier to go through those times when if you get laid off and all that. It's not you, but it's also a good opportunity to look at who you are and maybe potentially adjust in your career, like to find something more helpful. So sometimes I feel like this is also like a golden handcuff type of situation where people don't like it, but everybody says, "Oh my God, you have that? Amazing. Like, I envy you." And it's just hard to let go and just keep working on it. So sometimes, like, actually, either by your choice or somebody else's choice, when you can let go, it could be turning into a really good opportunity to like look at yourself. So I think that's like a really good thing you point out about really knowing what you want and go after that and not compare with other people.
Yeah, I think to add to one of the things that I think is important is when you're going through the experience is to make sure to find out where you get the most joy. Like I looked at myself and I really like planning. So typically when it comes to a get together or a trip, organizing friends, I'm typically the designated person. And so I think in my personal life, when I saw that, I was thinking, oh, maybe I should get into something with planning. I also like people. I like talking to a lot of people, and so I when I started to look into my own personal life and see where I got the most joy, that's when it allowed me to connect the dots outside of that space. And so I think it's good to peer into your personal life. What are the places that you
Mhm.
get a lot of praise, or you do really well, you get the most joy because that can
Mhm.
also connect the dots too.
Exactly, exactly. Actually, that's one of the key things that I help with my clients too. They're often only looking at the job openings out there and trying to pick one, the existing one. But I ask them to like start from them. Like, what is something you really want? What's something you really enjoy? And then not just thinking about your job function and certain level of title, but just look at everything. Like, what helps you to do what you really want? And sometimes they have like very opportunities that they didn't even think was something for them, but turns out it was like really the perfect things. So I think knowing yourself and starting from there can actually open up the opportunities more too that you didn't know. So just like you said, so that was really amazing. Cool. Um, in your experience of, first of all, your life journey is like really amazing and congratulations. Have you seen other women going through like similar struggles and maybe navigate it as well as you, or maybe not as well? But what kind of um, cases did you see, and what kind of things they struggle that you saw the most? Maybe different from your experience, but still, like what have you seen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who I know that are personally in a very similar phase that I was in about 10 years ago. I think one of the key pieces that like I've seen is people undercut themselves if let's say they look at a job and there's like eight qualifications and maybe there's two that are relevant that we feel 100% confident that we've achieved, but there's six more that are a little bit out of our range. I know in some contexts we may step away. There's
Mhm.
no harm in still going for it. You just never know. So I think that's something too, where if you see that um, uh, you don't qualify 100%, it's off the table. And so I think putting yourself out there still. Um,
Mhm.
I think too, sometimes there's this fear of reaching out to people who may be working at that company or may connect you to the right person. And I think it's okay to still reach out and say, hey, like I've applied for this job. Looks
Mhm.
like you may have a connection. Can I get some insight or can I pick your brain? Like I think that piece allows you to get your foot in the door. I think if there's any way for you to stand out from a sea of all these applicants, I would take it, especially if it's something you really want to
Mhm.
pursue. And I think also like negotiating and advocating for yourself. Like I
Mhm.
think it's really easy as time progresses to undervalue or undercut yourself.
Mhm.
But I think it's really important as the stages move on, maybe in an interview process, to still be able to negotiate, know your worth,
Mhm.
and to put the best offer on the table as well. So I think those are just some of the key things where I see people lose confidence or shy away after a certain point, but it's still important to keep on pushing because you may get a really beautiful result after that.
Hmm. I absolutely agree with you. And about the negotiation, most people think negotiation starts when you get an offer and then trying to raise the money up. But actually, negotiation starts from the very beginning. Like in self-promotion, negotiation is kind of same thing. Just like you said, they have all this checklist of the qualification. But this is something that somebody came up with the list of the qualification. They think people should have it to be able to do this job, but it may be actually not something that needs to happen. Somebody needs to have it to be able to do the job. But this is the somebody's idea, like, oh, I think to be able to do this, you need to have all these qualifications. So I see a lot of people who just say like to like, hey, I have this experience. Like, what do you think? And just giving the other person just like the power to decide, like, oh, sorry, you don't have this experience. We are looking for somebody with this experience, and that's it. You're done. So that's how I feel like you should approach it as like a negotiation mindset from the beginning. Like, what challenges do you have? What problem you're trying to solve? What is this role is really about? And showing that you can do it, you have ideas, you have experience, maybe not in the exactly same level, same role in the industry before, but like you have all the knowledge, experience you can put together and kind of bypass those checklists as much as possible to get in. Because a lot of checklists, there's nobody who check off everything. They usually put together more than what they really need. So like don't give up. And but not only just not giving up, but like just forget it and then just address like why you are the right person for the problem. Then you need to understand what the problem is and really get that out of those conversations. And I think from the very beginning, when you're selling yourself, you're advocating yourself, that is kind of negotiation already. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sitting in the hiring chair now, 10 years later, it's wild to say that. But sitting now on the opposite side, um,
Right.
I think it's interesting to be on this side, and I have a lot of respect for candidates who
Mhm.
can say, hey, I have not worked and done X, Y, and Z, but these are the things that I've done in the past that I think is transferable, or, this is a situation where I was thrown in with no context. I was starting
Mhm.
from the bottom, and this was my proven success. So I think if you're able to at least paint that picture and show like qualities like you're a self-starter or this is what you're able to do and learn, even though you're starting with no background, I think you're
Mhm.
able to make a case.
Yeah, I think that's very important because the qualification again is just about this current situation. I need somebody who can do this. But as you know, like in the company, the role keeps changing. And suddenly, like in like later, we may not need somebody who can do this, but something else. So somebody who can show that they can adapt and learn and grow and fit into those roles and more proactively, that I don't feel like I have to like pull them to drag them to another position. That's also very important. So to me, like I actually call it like potential, but I look at
Mm.
potential a lot more than qualifications. So even if that they come with a little bit weaker actually history, but if they achieve it in a much challenging situations than other people, like I see the potential. Like if I give support, this person will be like amazing, I'm really thriving. So don't think that you just don't have the what they're asking for. Don't give up. Like people may see different things, more potential than um, the all the checkpoints you have. So I think just like you said, that's the kind of things you see once you're in a hiring manager position, interviewing a lot of people, and also think about once this person joins, then they're going to stay here at least a few years and how the things will change. It is the right person for that. There are a lot more than what they put together in the job descriptions. So that's so true. So, in your experience of like people who struggle but not really making what they want versus who actually navigate through those challenges and get what they want, what do you think is the biggest differences or yeah, let's say differences that they do you see in them?
Sometimes I see the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
be a big impact. I think that's a very controllable piece of it. So instead of saying, this is where I'm at, I haven't hit,
Mm-hmm.
my goal, it's more so, I'm doing this as I work towards my goal. Like those are two very, very different mindsets. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's that first and foremost. I also think it's creating a schedule that allows you to still work on that goal at the end. So maybe you're not where you're at now. Is there something that you can do in the interim to show that even though this is where you're at, this is your true end goal? Because people will read through that. If you're doing something now, but you're working on the back end on a certificate or you're doing other opportunities on the side to achieve that, people will see through that and they'll see the dedication. And so I think it's also still keeping that top of mind. Sometimes people like to write their goals and put it in front of them just so they see it, or they like to calendar exactly the time during the week where they can focus just a little bit on that future goal. Whether you can use any of those tools, I think it's still good to continue that because at some point you'll probably leverage what you're doing now with what you're working on to achieve that goal.
I really like that. As a hiring manager, one of the most common thing I hear is there's nothing to learn in this role. But I don't believe it. If you keep thinking about what you want to learn and then applying in your current roles, there are plenty of things you can keep trying and learn and grow. So those people, in my mind, is that's a passive. Like the company has to give me some opportunity that I can learn something, but company is not a school, right? Like if you really want to learn something, there are plenty of opportunities you can try it out, just like you said. And sometimes it's visible to other people, sometimes it's not, but still you will show up as more and more like as a leader because you have all this effort you put in and distinguishing with other people over time. So I think that's like a very, very important point that you put that out. Like keep trying and learn and grow. I love that.
Yeah. I would say it reminds me of some of my experiences when I was working as a cashier at a restaurant, and now I'm implementing restaurant groups as they come. But like some of them, like some of the restaurants come on board, and so you can take what you learn from that because now you can be more of a consultant as they go
Mhm.
through this because okay, you have lunch rush. Oh, you're busy at this time. This is the downtime. You're not really behind a computer looking at technology, you're busy, so then you're able to consult. And I think too, like I helped my mom. My mom had her own business, and a lot of the people that implement are possibly business owners or they're CEOs, and so that has some of an impact as well. So there's going to be a lot of connections to other facets of your life impacting where you're at now. You just have to look for it, I would say.
Exactly, exactly. I think that you just have to look for it is related with like mindset, right? You have the
Yeah.
mindset, so you can take a break and pause and then take like a self-reflection, look at the bigger picture. When, especially when you feel like you are struggling with something, like, oh, I need this job or I need to get this job or whatever situation that is, people are just getting narrower and narrower in their vision. So the mindset will allow you to like, it's okay. It's okay. I can take a break, take a look, take a sit back and see the bigger picture. But it's hard to have that mindset. So what could be like your advice to people who like, yeah, I get that, I see that, but how do I get that mindset? Like, what could be your advice?
I kind of see it like working out a little bit. Where the I do not like running. I will admit, but I had it as a goal this year to run a 5K. And
Mm,
so, I was able to incrementally build more and more before my mile was about 20 minutes because I was mainly walking the mile.
mhm.
And I think at the end of the experience, I was running probably like a 13-minute mile, which is still long for some people, but it was like I almost cut that time in half. And
That's
so
amazing. Ooh.
thank you. I think that's the same way when it comes to mindset. And that doesn't mean overnight, we're gonna become this we're going to change our mindset per se, but I think it does require us to be mindful in the sense that, we hear what we're thinking, or we
Mm-hmm.
recognize what we're feeling, taking
Mm-hmm.
a step back and questioning, hey, is
Mm-hmm.
there a different way that I can see this? Like, what is another perspective that I can take? And
Mm-hmm.
continuing to reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's also kind of surrounding yourself with like-minded people or seeking out content that
Mm-hmm.
also reinforces that. So that's how I see it as a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Recognizing when you have those thoughts, challenging them, but also surrounding yourself with content that I think supports this new view that you want to see, kind of similar to running. I started blocking off time
Mm-hmm.
every week to do it. And I started timing and I did metrics. And I think, that I see it very similarly between the two.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Actually, there was a book called like a brain that's wearing sneakers or something. They explain the power of moving your body, exercising, and it's actually helping your brain and solves a lot of brain related issues. So I totally resonate with it. I know multiple people who has to do some exercise like kickboxing to release the stress and like moving the body is actually very, very powerful, more powerful than a lot of people realize. And I think another point you made is about like taking a pause. I think kind of what you said, but if I put it a little bit differently, like meeting new people, not people who you meet every day, but people who will make you think differently than usual, right? Like, so not people who will have the similar conversation, yeah, 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 and then I can just go with that, the rhythm, but somebody who will ask like questions that like, I never thought about that, huh? So those people, like meeting those people, I think could be also very helpful to like break out of your current like narrow vision thing and like, wait a second, I never thought about that, which would be a really good place in addition to all the self reflections and all that too. So yeah, I really like the suggestion, and I think those are doable. I'm also like a runner, very slow, but also same. uh, when just a side story, but when I first decided to run, I was running so slow that people who was power walking was passing me by and give me thumbs up. So I started from that, so I know what you mean.
I relate.
Yes. So I'm still slow, but I enjoy it. But like, yeah, I think it doesn't have to be running, but finding something that's fun for you. I think that's very important in terms of moving physically and trying to meet people who make you think out of your typical area and then out of the box. I think those are very good advice that people can do. Cool. Thank you.
There's a that sparks a book that I read, and I think this book was the catalyst or one of the catalysts called The
Mm-hmm.
Compound Effect. And I think it was pivotal in not necessarily creating pressure on myself to make the immediate change immediately. It was doing incremental changes so that at the end, when you reflect, you've
Mm-hmm.
made a big impact. And so I think that book was huge.
Cool. Yeah, I find that book and then put in the comment line so people can find that book. But this is so true. Like when we are working towards something, it feels like we are not doing much big change. But when you look back, like, whoa, look at all the things that cumulatively I achieved. So like that's totally true. So thank you. That's just a good connection. Like, is there any other like resources or something that you want to share with the people?
Compound Effect was my favorite. I also really liked this other book called Crucial Conversations. And
Mm,
what it does is it kind of gives you a little bit of a recipe behind
mm,
having conversations with others and meeting in the middle ground. Not that you may need that when you're talking to people day in and day out, but it allowed me in some of these situations where I'm networking to find a little bit
mm,
of a middle ground for the two of us to build a relationship. So I think that
mm,
was really huge as well. I personally really like Headspace too. So it's like a meditation
Mm.
app. But the reason why I like it is they have um, like 1 minute breath work, and it's just you taking a deep breath in and out. And I actually did that before my manager interview, and I got it.
Mm.
So I think the reason why I think it's important is like regulating your breath allows you to calm the mind. And so, maybe there's a lot of pressure for you when you're stepping into an interview. It's nice to kind of have a little bit of a reset go before going into the interview so that you have a clear mind and you can be your best self. So those are just some of like the tools that I've used. I think as well, like resources and strategies. I think leveraging like job boards in communities that you're in, I think is huge. I think not only leveraging like mentors, but even like family, relatives, aunts,
Mm.
uncles, friends of friends, aunts and uncles. I think once you're open about your journey, then people will want to see you succeed and they'll share resources with you as well. So I think the more open you are with others, the more that will come in and help.
It's so true. But just like you said, you need to be vulnerable because we have tendency that we don't want to show our struggling part. We want to share once it's all done and then very successful, like ta-da. But while you're struggling, you don't want to like show it. So that's the first thing you said actually at the interview, like the being vulnerable. That was like a big thing. And that means, I think also requires that you have to have confidence in you, knowing who you are, what you really want. So you have the confidence in who you are. But if you feel like, oh, I'm only successful when I have this job or this title or when I achieve this, and you don't, then you don't have the confidence to be able to give you courage to be vulnerable either. So it's like cycle. You need to like cut the cut the cycle and then start a different cycle. So it's that's why it's hard at the beginning. Reversing the cycle is very hard, but that's the first step. Go out and exercise and read those books and meet people who ask questions that you don't really hear and make you think, huh, wait a sec. So those are really good. And when you're talking about your books, the one thing that came up to my mind is a book called, I think, Joy on Demand. So
Mm.
that's the book I read when I had a really, really person that I hate in the work, but I had to work with this person. And this book suggested like you can have joy like on demand. Like so if before you go into this meeting with this person, just talk to yourself like I love this person. This person really loves me. Like he wants best for me. I want best for him. And just say it and then go in. And for many times I say it, but it doesn't totally resonate with it. But at some point I started to resonate like, yeah, I mean, this person is not born to hate me or make my life miserable. Just he's going through his own challenges and he's just showing it to everyone. And started to have that change in mindset, which makes the relationship much better because now I'm not going in as like "Ugh," either. I'm going as more understanding. Oh, you must be going through. There must be a lot of things going through in your life, like a more understanding way. So that book just came to my mind, thanks to you. Cool. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and all the tips and advices. It was so helpful. Is there any like final thoughts or advice you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I am so honored to be able to speak through this. I know being vulnerable was definitely learned in the last several years. I've always been somebody who's like, okay, always best put forward, but I've seen a lot of beauty in being vulnerable and people kind of relating and being open and seen. Because when you're looking online, you don't always see that. You only see the picture perfect um,
Exactly.
moments. So, that's definitely a big learning curve for me, but I'm so glad to have been able to do this. I think one of the big things that I would say is, everyone around you wants to see you succeed. And so I think really, really, really leverage that community. I am very people centric, but I do honestly believe that. I think the more
Mhm.
vulnerable you are, the more open, and the more help you ask for in terms of finding opportunities and jobs and talking about what you're looking for, I think that will flow in. Um, and really trying to continue to say, what am I going to learn after this experience if let's say you're not where you're at, where
Mhm.
you want to be at this point in time. So instead of why me, it's, what have I learned and what can I leverage? I think with this, I think for me, vulnerability has been something I've been learning. I know within our organization, we do kind of your leadership point of view where you share your life story. And so I was terrified of doing that. I did that for the first time last year, which I think gave me the courage to do in her shoes. And I think which led me to you today. So it's sort of a trickle down effect. And so I think people are really looking for you to succeed. And I think that does require vulnerability, whether that be sharing what you're looking for or trying to build your network. I think that is really pivotal since the
Mhm.
more open you are, the more that you'll be receiving. I think another piece is really that mindset of instead of like, why me? Why is this happening? More so, what can I leverage this in this experience that I can bring into other experiences to make me stronger?
Mhm.
So I think that piece is huge as well. And I think, like, lastly, I know stability will always ebb and flow. So, jobs come and go, different periods of your life will be great, others are going to be tough, but no matter what, it doesn't make you less of who
Mhm.
you are if it's not stable. I think, if anything, you become even more of who you are. And I think I never forget that. So I think those are just the key things that I have on my side.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's really amazing. And you mentioned that you're open to like people, sorry. And you mentioned that you're open that if people wants to like ask you some questions, like you're open to like chat with them. What's the best way for people to reach out to you with any questions or advice?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, Jackie Santayana, feel free to message me. I would love to connect.
Awesome. Sounds good. I also put your LinkedIn profile in the comment below so people can find you. Thank you so much for taking time and sharing your inspiring story, Jackie. And I think this is like really inspirational for a lot of people. So really appreciate that.
No, thank you for having me.